This is John doing a dual broadcast. It's going to be for the Prepared Mind channel and for MGTOW is Freedom. This video is entitled The Feminization of America. It has to do with what we're seeing as a result of this election. It is incredible to me. It's absolutely incredible. They're going to do cry-ins. This is the form of protest that the feminized people in this nation are taking. A cry-in, which is kind of like a sit-in, a whine-in, a snivel-in. They're going to protest the loss of the election by acting like babies. Literally acting like babies. I mean, how many of you guys know that when your infant sons and daughters don't get their way, they cry. When they want something, they cry. They don't communicate, they don't think, they just cry. It is that the asinine levels we're reaching in this nation is horrific. With regard to being men, the people in this nation, the men, are not acting like men. They're not leading the women. Women are taking this world down. The over-feminization, the crybaby mentality. It is off the hook, off the charts. Our nation is becoming weaker and weaker. We are being overrun with emotional response rather than intellectual discourse. What does that say about the state of our country? Weaker and weaker. What does that mean? Well, if you're preparing for an emergency and shit hits the fan, that means you better get on it. Right? You need to understand where we're at as a nation. As individuals, we can take personal responsibility and we can think and we can act. Right? Chance favors the prepared mind. Right? Men out there need to stand up and say, I have the penis, and I'm not gonna be one of these pussies, one of these weaklings that wants to stage a cry-in. It is to me, it is disgusting. Literally disgusting to see people acting like this. Grown human beings, whether they're men or women. But this behavior is completely indicative of where we are at. Where we are at as a nation. When people don't get their way in a political sense, they are now crying. They're doing it publicly. I noticed this. I noticed this on election night. I heard about it from yesterday, and now I'm hearing about it again today. People want to cry about this. Now, when people want their way, guess what they do? They get the police to be their muscle. All these feminists want to press charges on men, and then when they don't get their way and they can't do anything about it other than whine, they start crying. Literally now, it is about crying. They have taken their closets, these crybabies and feminists, and they've come out of the closets. They've come out in the living room and they subdued their men. Right? They've subdued their men with their stuff, their bilge. And now they're out of the house and on the street. They vote and they don't get their way and they cry, and then they go to the town center, the marketplace, and they are now crying. Crying in the streets, crying for public display, for attention. Where is this nation going? What is the purpose of this? Well, this is what women do. And I'm not talking about real women that accept their roles as women. I'm talking about feminist women. They try and manipulate people, not only men, but government. Because they'll go sit in front of an elected body or an appointed body and they'll whine to them and they'll look for sympathy, which is an emotional response. The logical response is you didn't get your way, go about your business. If you want to fight like a man, then take up arms. But instead they're choosing to cry. So feminists, they bully, they belittle, they besmirch, they attack men, and they attack political bodies. They scream and they yell, they throw fits. They'll try and blackmail and extort people to do what they say based on the information they have. You're going to do what I say, or I'm taking this to the boss, or I'm taking this to the city council. That's extortion. Right? That's blackmail. That's what these feminists are doing to our nation. And now that they've lost, they've gone through all that exercise, and we've gone through an election, now they want to cry. Women's suffrage was about having the right to vote. The old theory, long ago, the old school thinking was women shouldn't be allowed to vote and have a say because they aren't thinking creatures. They aren't thinking human beings. They're emotional. And so what happened? Well, the women that did think, they got together and did the women's rights suffrage movement, right? And they finally got it to where women had the right to vote. The government recognized that they are free people as well. And now what are we faced with? There are not thinking women out there. We've got all of the emotional dunderheads, and they push their emotional bilge on people through the feminist ideologies that are part of the indoctrination system. And it's taking our nation down. It took down households on the individual level, on the individual basis, right? So that women run the house now, they run the finances, and they've run their families in debt to the tunes of hundreds of thousands of dollars, where they are in debt for decades and decades because of bad fiscal decisions in the house. And now women want into the business world. They want into the political arena because they vote and they think that they have a say. And they're making it there, a lot of them, on their merits, that is their intellectual capacity. But I think the majority of them, and I'm talking 80%, operate on an emotional level in positions of power, not just in their house, but in business and in the public sector, that is government positions. And they're making emotional pleas, and then they're doing the same tricks. Feminism started in colleges, it moved into people's personal lives, and now it's out in the public. It's in the private sector and business, and it is in our public sector, in our government. And this is what we're facing for it. Our nation is being destroyed by this type of thinking. That if you have a complaint, someone has to listen, and they have to do something in your favor because you're an effeminized human being, whether you're a woman or a man. And there's a lot of these feminist men. So when I talk about feminist people, I'm talking about these feminist men. They're going to be standing right next to these feminist women, crying, because that is the last bastion of control they have. They bully, they bullshit, they push their weight around, they demand, they offer punishments if you don't do as they say, and then they finally break down to just crying. And the whole way there are effeminate men helping them along and supporting them because they've been taught, indoctrinated, that they need to support these women and they need to understand and be sympathetic and all that. But what men have done is they've checked their intelligence at the door, and they bought into the feminist emotional line. Because when you sit down and critically analyze feminist ideology, it has more holes in it than Swiss cheese that was nailed by a machine gun. It's holes on top of holes. But that is the ideology that is feeding into this nation. It's the same type of ideology that is fueling the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual, queer movement. It's not based on legitimate needs and concerns that this country should be done with. It has to do with emotions and whining and crying and bullying. And don't think that this nation's enemies, and we do have enemies, don't think that this nation's enemies don't see it. The radical Muslims, terrorists, they see it and they know our nation is weak and they can come here. This nation was the last to fall to this feminist crap. Europe has been dealing with it, and now look where they're at. They're overrun with radical, masculine Muslims. They're being taken over. And the men of the European continent are being held back by feminist ideology, and it's destroying them and allowing them to be destroyed. China and Russia are sitting back and watching. Those are our enemies, if you want to look at them. Or you could say there are competitors on the world stage for business and economics, and they're watching our system fail under this feminist ideology. And by feminism, let me say what I mean by that. It doesn't have anything to do with being feminine or womanly. It has to do with implementing Marxist, militant techniques into controlling the way people think in order to make a greater agenda come true. This nation is being brought down by political correctness and feminist ideology, and it needs to be stopped. Hillary Clinton, who lost the election, was going to be the face of this from the presidential office. And I'll tell you right now, Barack Obama was the face of it for the last 8 years, only he was a man. But we were going to step it up one more notch with a woman in the White House. But it wasn't just having a thinking woman in there, it's having an emotional woman in the White House with her ideology, pushing that on us, forcing it on us through policy and law. It's got to be stopped. Now that's the face on the front. What can we do as individuals? You can fight it as an individual as much as you can. Fight it by speaking through your political elected officials. But we have to prepare, literally prepare. What I mean is storing food, water, ammunition, having a plan to deal with emergency situations as preppers. Because of what is going on, they are going to bring this nation down. They are weakening it. And whether you're talking about the criminal element or a national enemy, when they see weakness, they will attack. That's called opportunity. They already have the want, the criminals and enemies. All they need is the opportunity. And when you see a weak person, a weak nation, they can be taken advantage of. They are weak, and they can be victimized. And that's the route we're heading in, just like Europe. And I cannot believe that people don't see what's going on, because Hillary was talking about bringing in 500% more refugees out of the Middle East. And they are radicalized thinkers. They are not American. They are not coming here to live the American experience. They're coming here in a silent invasion to fill our nation full of radical thinkers who will take advantage of an emasculated, wimpy culture. And Americans are not wimpy. We're red-blooded men. But we've been weakened on the whole. And we need to stop that. And we need to know what it's about. And as individuals, we need to prepare our households, our communities, people we love and care about. We need to get prepared because they can bring the system down. And we'll talk more about how they can bring the system down later. This is John, host of the Prepared Mind channel and host of MGTOW is Freedom. This is an alert, folks. Look at what's happening to your nation. It's not just about your individual MGTOW bank account. It's about our nation and what is going on and what we need to do about it. You know, it's not just about being an individual prepper and hiding in your hidey hole. It's about understanding that the enemy is bringing the fight to us, and we need to be prepared. Not just with cans of soup and bags of bullets, but we need to be prepared mentally for what is coming. So you have a great day. Think about it. Give me your comments. I thank you for subscribing. If you're not yet a subscriber, click the subscribe button. And you folks have a great day. And like I said, think about it. And we'll talk more. Bye-bye.